some of the things that I see every day and I hear when I ride the trains and I talk to the public is they want information. They need information. And you need to know not only what is going on a day-to-day basis so you can make an informed decision on whether to use a T and whether or not to use alternative modes, but they also need information with regards to where we're going. They understand that we have challenges. They understand that we are a system that is exposed to the elements. But without the information, that adds to frustration. We are committed to transparency. We're committed to being open and dialogue, two-way dialogue with our public.
All right, welcome to the 13th Annual Street Talk 10-in-1. Tonight we are welcoming our largest crowd ever between folks here and those registered online. We're looking at between 250 and 300 individuals joining us. Because every year we make progress, and every year as a community we come together to celebrate that in this region we are leaders and we love transportation. So can we give ourselves a round of applause? Okay, whose first Street Talk is this? Whoa. Okay, who has been to more than 5 Street Talks? Okay, Vineet. Who has been to more than 10 Street Talks? Okay, I got 3. Yes, Steve Miller. I got my founding board members, Steve, Julia in the back, and Vineet, also Vineet. That means if he goes over tonight, he knows better. Anyone been to every single Street Talk? Julia, maybe? Nina, yes, round of applause. 13 Street Talks. All right, so I want to get to one of the most important parts of the night. While there are maybe 200 or 300 of us together, we have Twitter, we have social media. So this is an event where we encourage you, if you hear something, if you see something that you like tonight, we want you to tweet. We want you to get the word out. We want you to take a picture. So please do. We encourage it in this space. We also just want to give a big shout out to our partners in this space. Revolutionary Space, the Old South Meeting House, has been co-hosting this with us for years. They have a tradition of dissent and free speech. And so we lean into that tradition together to push the edges of what is possible in our community. So a huge round of applause to the Old South Meeting House. And I also want to thank our partners at GBH Forum who are making it possible for people. We have folks registered in California for this event. They make it possible for folks at home to be with us here tonight. So a huge shout out to GBH Forum. Great. And I also just want to thank tonight's sponsors. We have Denterline, Nelson Nygaard, Stantec, and VHB. They truly, literally make it possible for us to pay for this event. So please give them a round of applause. And I just want to shout out that we have dozens of current board members, former board members, current staff, former staff, partners, volunteers, and funders here tonight who all make the Livable Streets community possible. And I would also like to embarrass Amy, who led putting this entire event together. Can we cheer Amy on? She's hiding over there. Okay, and we were supposed to welcome Ann Engel tonight to give a brief introduction. She was unfortunately sick, so we're just gonna thank our partners here again and go right to the general manager. But first, we need to talk about the rules of the night. Unfortunately, I was told last year that I was too soft on you, that I gave 30-second windows, I was kind, so Abby is taking over the job of yelling at people.
Because nothing says that I'm mean like a blazer that looks like it came from the Willy Wonka spring collection. So, and earrings to match. So yes, I am here to also be your co-host. My name is Abby Jamiel. I am the Emerald Network Director. And let's talk about the rules. Because again, we can't have fun without rules. So, number one, this evening is meant to be really fast-paced. I'm going to keep intros to a minimum because y'all have Google and you can Google people and see what they do. Also, it'll be nice to hear from people as people. Second, we have multiple speakers this evening, roughly 10, roughly 5, and then an intermission, and then 5 more. We will end 8-ish now, since we're starting a little bit late. Again, each speaker will have precisely 7 minutes. We will be very mean about this. I will come up to the stage. You will be embarrassed. We will gently and softly play you off with music, just like the Oscars and the Grammys. It's going to be great. And if that is you and you get played off tonight, that's okay. We love you. It wasn't your night. You didn't win. That's okay. You can come back next time.
Okay, I have the pleasure of introducing our first speaker for the night, General Manager Eng. This is his first Street Talk. He is a Mets fan, so feel free, to rip him a little bit. He knows he has 7 minutes. He's willing to play along. And as I like to say, the tea isn't always on time, but the Street Talk 10 and 1 is. So welcome, General Manager Phillip Eng.
Wow, put a lot of pressure on me. Mets fan and all, and on time. So you only have 7 minutes, right? And now I'm going to start off slow, and then I'm going to speed up as we go, right? Because we're eliminating those slow matters there. Stacy, thank you very much. Abby, I don't have a blazer like yours, but thank you so much. It really brightens up the room. And thank you to WGBH for hosting this event, too. It really is a pleasure to be here. Let me see, real quickly. So what is the T about, right? I think everybody knows mass transportation is vital. It's vital to communities. It's vital to quality of life. That is why it is so important to all of us. That's why it's front page when things are not going well, but it's also why this is such an important role for me as a public servant, to be able to give back and to really impact people's lives in a positive way. And I know the T has a lot of work to do, but we're committed to doing that because it is a big focus of ours. We want people to ride the T. How many people ride the T? There you go. I knew it. We want more people to ride the T. We want more people to ride it every day. It really is about quality of life. And despite the fact that it's the oldest system in the nation, it has a lot of history. We are going to be doing new things, bigger and better, and we're going to improve the system for everybody, delivering safe, reliable, more robust transportation as we move forward. And how are we doing that, right? Even before I got here, Governor Healy knew that we had to focus on our workforce, rebuilding our workforce from top to bottom and bottom to top. I'm proud to say right now we have hired over 1,350 new employees to the T, and a lot of those frontline workers are dedicated. They're out there already doing work in our system, and I'm seeing and very inspired by their ability to deliver. We're retraining them. We're helping them with career paths. We are embracing them in terms of letting them know that we are focused on their safety, their careers, and be able to have that dialogue that we really need with our frontline workers to be able to give them the tools, the equipment, and the clear direction on how to deliver and improve service for the public. They're very engaged, and it really is a great thing because working for the T 365 days a year, 24/7 is a tough grind for those folks, and they really do deliver, and they are very committed to improving the system for the public, their families, and communities they serve. And safety, first and foremost, safety in everything we do, whether it's in our system, and it's an inherently tough environment to be working with train movements, third rail, catenary, all those types of things that are inherent risk to where the work zone is. It's the same thing you have, though. It's everywhere, whether it's at home, whether it's in the office, but we know in our environment we need to ensure worker safety, but we also want that to ensure public safety. It is about making sure the public realizes that they can use our system every day, that it is safe, and that's not only in terms of just knowing that we're working on our system in terms of track, signal, and power, but it's the train cars that they're riding in, it's the station environment that we're focused on. And there's a lot of work going on there with the leadership that we brought in. Over 150 years of transit experience and 4 new hires that we brought in August. Chief of Stations, Chief of Infrastructure, Chief of Capital Delivery, and a Senior Advisor for Railroad Transportation. All of those folks are really focused on growing the workforce and ensuring safety for the traveling public. And we're doing this with improved communication, improved transparency. That is internal and external. Some of the things that I see every day and I hear when I ride the trains and I talk to the public is they want information. They need information. And you need to know not only what is going on a day-to-day basis so you can make an informed decision on whether to use a T and whether or not to use alternative modes, but they also need information with regards to where we're going. They understand that we have challenges. They understand that we are a system that is exposed to the elements. But without the information, that adds to frustration. We are committed to transparency. We're committed to being open and dialogue, two-way dialogue with our public. And from day one, right? Slow speeds, slow talking, slow, speed up the speech. I don't know how much time I have left. I haven't heard music. But we do know that riding the T, whether it's the buses, whether it's the subways, whether it's the commuter rail, whether it's the ferries, people want to be able to use the system. First and foremost, it has to be safe. Second, it has to be reliable, and it has to be on time. And we're working on all of those. Safety will never be number two with everything we do. But we know that we are very focused now on rebuilding our infrastructure as we rebuild the workforce. Over the last few months, we have made dramatic improvements in terms of eliminating speeds restrictions. And we've started to demonstrate that we can fulfill our commitments and our promises to the public. Back at the end of October, when we finished work on Ashmont Mattapan, all of those speed restrictions, as promised, were lifted. Recently on the Red Line, we completed more work than originally anticipated as well, lifting 9 out of 6, 9 instead of 6. And then now in the Green Line Tunnel, not only did we do the structural work that we needed to make sure the tunnel is safe, but we also addressed 12 speed restrictions in that time period. We are bringing the number down. Thank you. Thank you. We're bringing the number down. We're adjusting power. How much time? 2 minutes. All right. We're focused on our power system as well. Rolling stock is another key element, right? Obviously, if you fix the track, you fix the power, you need to have safe, reliable rolling stock. We are very aggressively working with regards to ensuring the reliability and the safety of the new cars that we're getting stays at that quality, but we're working very hard on ensuring that we can increase the production of that. And commuter rail, mass transportation, it is the cleanest way to travel. Well, my understanding is we are less than 1% of the statewide emissions in terms of production, emissions in the state, and we intend to improve on that. We are focused on reducing our carbon footprint, not only in terms of what we're doing with electric buses, looking at electrification of the commuter rail systems, but also getting people out of their cars and really reducing the footprint of carbon emissions in the state, and not only protecting the environment for us today, but future generations, our children's children. It is really vitally important. We know how important mass transportation is, and that option has to be a viable option to really go hand in hand with all the other modes that people want to choose. Oops. All right. Regional vitality, economic, transportation moves the economy, right? If you don't have safe, reliable, robust transportation, you cannot support the economy. You do not see businesses thrive. You do not see people wanting to live in those areas. We know how important having a station is. We know how important proximity to stations is. And back to everything I've said, safe, reliable, robust transportation. That's what makes the economy go. That's what makes people enjoy quality of life, visiting places, visiting restaurants, visiting, and it's not just for work. It's for really everything we do day in and day out, connecting people, connecting communities. And then lastly, everything is about rebuilding the T, not only back to where we were before, but we have a vision going forward, right? It's not just getting it back to be safe, reliable, which is number one priority right now, but making sure we have a balanced program and that we're focused on building an improved system for the future. Because we know, as we continue to serve the public, we need to be looking at future development and how do we as a T be a partner in helping the Commonwealth thrive, grow, economic sustainability, and I'm almost out of time, I think. It's winning back the riders. All of you are riding. It's getting all of your colleagues and friends to ride, and then just making it the best choice, because from my perspective, it is the best choice to travel. And I apologize for being a Mets fan. Thank you.
And shimmering clouds.
Thank you, General Manager. It truly is an honor to have you here. Also, it is an honor to be graced with the presence of Catherine Gleason, who is not only our Livable Streets coworker, but also to be followed in this talk by and with Vineet Gupta with the Boston Transportation Department. Just as a note for speakers, the clicker is acting up, okay? It's the clicker. So just, yes, be quite gentle with it. Looks like you got it, Catherine. All right, amazing, take it away.
Thanks, Abby. All right, let's get into it. So hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Gleason. I'm the Public Policy Manager at LivableStreets, and I'm here to talk to you all tonight about a recent report we released analyzing the City of Boston's progress on their Go Boston 2030 goals. Whoops, that was my first slide. So just a little bit of background. In 2017, the City of Boston released their Go Boston 2030 Vision and Action Plan. And this plan set many transportation and mobility-related goals for them to hopefully reach by 2030. In 2020, we released our first not-on-a-shelf accountability report. And I saw a former staff member, Louisa, somewhere in here who wrote that report, embarrassing her really quick. And just this past September, we released our second Not on a Shelf report. And when we got into this project, we learned that the city was actually planning to update their Go Boston 2030 plan. And so with this report, our goal was really to provide a thoughtful roadmap of things for the city to consider as they work to update this plan. Now, before we got into crunching the numbers, we wanted to take a step back and think about everything that had changed in the city of Boston since 2017, when the initial plan was released, as well as since 2020, when we released our first report. And so the first thing, of course, that comes to mind is the COVID-19 pandemic, and with respect to a transportation plan, specifically how it drastically changed the way people move around the city. And now, the other thing we wanted to make sure to highlight is that since 2021, the City of Boston has had 3 mayoral administrations, which, as you can imagine, creates some potential hurdles for keeping a plan not on a shelf, as we like to say. And the third thing we wanted to highlight is, of course, the escalating impacts and frequency of major climate events in the City of Boston. And then finally, the city needing to take stronger action on issues of racial justice and equity, and with respect to a transportation plan, in particular, about transportation and urban planning decisions. So in our 2020 report, we made several high-level recommendations, and we wanted to revisit those to see how the city was doing on some of the issue areas that we had flagged previously. Now, you'll see that most of the recommendations we made sort of are falling into these on track or making progress buckets where the city has been either doing really well or is making progress. With the exception of collecting data, which you'll see in the lagging bucket there, which I'll get into a little bit more on my next slide. So we did some data analysis focused on the 33 aspirational goals and targets that the city set in their original plan. And now we decided to focus on these targets rather than the 58 specific projects in the plan. Because we knew the city was going to be working on an update, we felt like it made the most sense to focus on the overall framework and direction of the plan rather than on specific projects that may change in future iterations. I also think Vineet, who will come up after, will be talking a little bit about those projects for you all tonight too. So getting into the targets we were able to analyze, you'll see on the right side of this chart here, we have kind of a variety of targets from issues of road safety, where the city is either on track or has even met some of their goals around that issue, to things that the city is maybe a little bit behind schedule on, for example, their greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. Now, on the left side of the chart here, you'll see that many of the targets we either weren't able to analyze due to a lack of data, or we recommend that the city reevaluate that target. And so what we mean by that is that some of the targets aren't necessarily practically measurable, or perhaps we now have a better or even just a different understanding of the issue that the target is trying to address. And so, to give an example, there is a target in the plan that is about decreasing the Bostonians' average commute time by 10%. Now, as I mentioned a little before, Of course, commuting patterns have drastically changed because of the pandemic. More people are working from home, and we really wanted to recommend that the city revisit this target with this context in mind, and not just think about how commuting patterns had changed, but also think about the broad spectrum of reasons of how people move about the city and why. So, taking into account things like going to the grocery store or accessing medical care, those like needs and resources that people are moving about the city to access. So a little bit about some of the targets that we weren't able to analyze due to a lack of data. This is a theme in our report that we really highlight as an area of improvement for the city, because if they aren't able to track and report on the progress that we know that they are making on their transportation goals, then they won't be able to report on and know whether or not they're meeting their goals by 2030. So finally, we make many recommendations. Definitely recommend you check out the plan for more, or check out the report for more of those. But really, we wanted to emphasize here that with their update, the city has an opportunity to better incorporate issues like housing and racial justice and climate, and really knit those into their transportation goals and their transportation plan. And so we really do feel like if the city is able to do this and also kind of form those structures that I was mentioning before to report on data, we're confident that the city will be able to set a strong and achievable plan and roadmap for the next 7 years. Before I welcome Vineet to the stage, I just quickly want to shout out all the folks at Livable Streets who were instrumental in this report process, as well as all the folks at the city and at other agencies who were amazing about sharing data and all the information with us that we asked for. This is a 50-page report, maybe even more than that, so I barely scratched the surface tonight. Please, if you're interested in learning more, check out our website, which I've linked up here. And without further ado, Vineet, I welcome you to the stage. Vineet is from the city of Boston, and he's going to talk to you all a little bit more about the Go Boston 2030 update process.
You can just forward it to the next slide. Thank you. I have to say that having a partnership with Livable Streets to keep the city honest and on track is one of the best partnerships we can potentially have. So thank you for that, Livable Streets. It's great to have that checks and balances. I did hear that we got an A+, so with an incomplete. But the plan is, in fact, not on a shelf. If you walk around the city, you'll see the improvements that have been made since the plan was published in 2017. You can see that there's a plethora of new bus lanes and bike lanes all over the city. If you spend more time and go to East Boston, you'll be able to transfer between modes at the mobility hubs that we have installed in East Boston. You can now get onto a bike through our bike share system and go to every neighborhood in Boston. If you live in the Dorchester area and you want to go to shop in the Newmarket Mall or go downtown, the Fairmont line now comes on weekends, and you don't have to wait as long. If you live in Mattapan or you're visiting Mattapan, today you can get onto the 23, 28, 29 for free. All of these are some examples of the many projects that we implemented since the plan was published, and it was possible because there was an investment within our capital plan as well as in staffing. We established a transit team, and we established a new mobility team. But during these 7 years, the mobility landscape has changed, and as Catherine mentioned, we are more focused on investing in underserved areas. We've realized how important that is. We have a deeper understanding of connectivity between bike and bus networks, and that gives us an agenda to go forward. For people who wake up in the morning and go to work, today 1/3 of them stay at home and work. That's a huge shift in how people travel. And finally, today you can, and this wasn't possible 7 years ago, you can use your phone and have an ice cream cone delivered to your home in an SUV. All of this means that we have to reiterate our goals and metrics, and Patterson talked about that. We are working on that already, and there's a team of data scientists doing that right now. They'll be delivering that report hopefully in early next year. We are going to make a new list of projects and policies that will be available this spring, and we hope to do all of that in collaboration with all of you through our stakeholder group engagement process and through a collaboration with community groups out in the neighborhoods, particularly those neighborhoods that haven't had investment for a very long time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Vineet. Thanks, Vineet. Right at the line. You did it, though. Congratulations. All right. So thanks, y'all. Now we will hear from Alex Hallowell, who spends time on the next step. So we just heard about plans that a lot of us in this room get paid to make. So the next step is actually putting this into practice. And we will hear about the bus priority infrastructure. Hot topic. Alex, here you go. And if you can just keep it close to your face.
Okay. Oh, goodness. All right. Hi, everyone. Oh, no. All right. So my talk is titled Not Just Another Plan, so in a similar vein. Hi, I'm Alex. I am a bus rider. I am a mom, and I recently relocated back to the Boston area from California. I grew up on the South Shore, and I lived in Boston before my time in California. I am the director of transit priority at the T, and I want to make buses better and streets safer for the next generation. I've used environmental stewardship as a core part of my job, with mode shift being sort of the big thing that I can personally contribute to environmental justice, both globally through greenhouse gas reductions, but also locally in terms of reducing particulates that wreck kids' lungs. Our team recently launched the priority vision for where to build transit priority infrastructure in the region. It comes from a network analysis that demonstrates where people are stuck on slow buses. The analysis helps us direct our limited resources to the most impactful areas to move people faster and more reliably through the region. The toolkit lays out an array of options available to us, municipal partners, and community advocates when considering how to address delay. So, yes, I know. Another plan. Hear me out. There are a lot of people riding buses. I want to talk for a minute about bus riders. I've got some facts that may surprise you, though in this crowd perhaps it won't. The first is that there are about 300,000 people who use the bus system every day in the Boston area. I'd like to compare that to the 360,000 people who use the subway. I think we don't hear about buses nearly as proportionate to the ridership as we do about the rail system. Another fun fact is that bus ridership recovery has been stronger and more robust than rail. System-wide, buses have about 70% of their ridership back. And this October, we hit a high of 76% of pre-pandemic ridership. Rail ridership has stalled at just over half. I think it's pretty obvious why that might be. Let's see. So, oops, I need my notes on the next page. As General Manager Eng emphasized earlier, our work really needs to be oriented around action. We need to deliver results now. And so how do we bring the biggest impact to the most riders in the shortest amount of time? How do we reduce time wasted spent in traffic, waiting for that Uber Eats driver to get out of the bus stop? I want to focus in here on some examples. So here's how the vision is targeting the needs of riders. These are 14 of our highest ridership routes, all with 75% or more of their pre-pandemic ridership recovered. You'll note that several of these routes have actually had growth since 2019, and these folks are not waiting on a recovery. They need more service, and they need better service now. So I want to zoom, sorry, here's the same graph, but annotated with projects that we are working on or that we have recently completed. And I want to pick on the 111 here. This route now has the majority of its alignment in dedicated busway. The Broadway lanes in Revere and Chelsea, there's a lane over the Tobin, and then also along Congress Street. And so this is really the vision in action. Slide. Oh no. Okay. I also want to zoom out for a moment and pause and think about the way that our work impacts the state and our emissions. The transportation sector accounts for the largest share of emissions by sector. It's a staggering 37%. And so we as an industry need to step up and give people a viable alternative, not just to get to work, but to live your life. It's a moral imperative that drives me and drives my team, and I think is one of the reasons that you're all here tonight. So, perhaps you will begin to believe me when I say that we have a plan for action. Let's see. The proof is out there on the streets. Some of you ride along these corridors in your own neighborhoods, and maybe you took one here tonight. The priority team, along with our tireless municipal partners, several of whom are sitting in the front row here tonight, have really doubled down during the pandemic and brought a whole bunch of new projects to the region. We have continued that work and have really ambitious plans to grow the pace of expansion over the next several years. So, what is on deck for next year? Here's some of what we're planning to build. We're planning a number of quick build projects all over the region. We are targeting primarily Chelsea, East Boston, Revere, and Everett, where we're anticipating increasing frequency as part of the bus network redesign's phase 1 rollout next year. We also have several major corridor projects that are very exciting. Columbus Phase 2 will go to bid next year. Blue Hill Ave, which you'll hear more about tonight, is entering major design, and my team will be launching conceptual design on a project on Lower Broadway in Everett next year as well. So in the spirit of action, I hope you will speak up if there is a project in your neighborhood that you are excited about, and I hope you will continue to support Complete Streets. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Whoa, sorry, I'm yelling at everyone. So buses are great, but bikes are great too. Oh, we're gonna throw down. Well, I was gonna say our next speaker needs no introduction, but clearly you just introduced ourselves. If you know, you know. If you don't, you are about to. This is the Vivian Ortiz, Boston's bike mayor, who will again grace us with her presence and tell us more about the roles and responsibilities that come with this royal title.
So, I'm Vivian, I live in Mattapan, and I ride a bike. I'm gonna do this very quickly because I don't wanna listen to the music at the very end, all right? So why is it that I'm the bike mayor? It was, next slide, why don't we go ahead and do that? When my friend, can you? Michaela? Okay. No, the next one. All right, let me see if, do you need me to do it? It's not doing it. There we go. All right. How many of y'all know? Oh, first of all, the question that I have to ask. How many of you do not ride a bicycle? Hands up. It's okay. It's not a met. I usually ask how many people ride a bike, and I know that in this group we're going to have a lot of folks, all right? We want to change that, all right? We'll work with you to change that. Okay. So Courtney Williams up here on the top. Everybody should know the brown bike girl. She showed up on Instagram one day. She had a sash across her body that said she was the people's bike mayor of New York City. And I was like, is that really a thing? How'd you do that? And she let me know that it is. So the Bikes, which is a program that is in the Netherlands, is the Bike Mirror Network. Soon after that, after Courtney became the Bike Mirror in New York City, the trio down here, Stacy, Becca, I know you're somewhere here, and I'm not sure if Galen's in the house or not, but gave me a call and said, we think that you need to be the Bike Mirror. And I said, I really can't do that because I am not that, I can't be that type of activist because of the job that I have. And I don't really, that's not really my thing. And then I remember Becca saying, we want you to do what you already are doing. Because the majority of the bike mirrors, they've got this whole forum, they've got all this stuff, they're always fighting and all that. And I was like, that's not the way I do things. I like to do working with individuals one-on-one, and they said, just keep doing what it is that you're doing, all right? So went through the whole process, and it was at the Boston Cyclists Union, their fundraiser, that I was named the Bike Mayor of Boston. All right, this is when we do, I wanna ask you, or just point out, the first Bike Mirror was in 2016 in Amsterdam. Bikes is based in Amsterdam. I now want to ask you guys, do you know which continent has the most bike mirrors? There are 135 around the world right now. Which continent? Come on, this is taking up time. All right? India has its own division. Out of the 54, only 3 of them are not in India, all right? Followed by Europe, the Americas, all of them, okay? And then Africa has 6, and Australia actually has 1. The picture on the bottom is when we get together. This is one of the things that I really enjoy. And we have network calls. And so this is the women's bike mayors group that gets together. We're all fighting for the same thing. There are some really badasses on there that are able to do some really awesome, amazing things. And I'm also part of the Latin American network and also the North American network. So there are bike mayors everywhere. So this is not if you know me, you know pictures of the way I share my story. We need to build our community. We need to build relationships with these folks. Like I said, I'm not into fighting. And I do remember when our former mayor, Marty Walsh, it got to the point that every time he saw me, he'd be like, Vivian, we're working on this, this, and this. And it was like, I am not that person that gets in your face and says, when are you going to? I often invited him to come and ride a bicycle with me. That never happened. And then I said, we need to kind of tone that down. That's not the way that I operate anyway. So I go up to folks when I see them. I ask them, do you know about these projects? What are you doing? Do you want to come out and ride with me? If they don't want to ride, that's okay. It's our responsibility to let them know what's happening. Every elected official, when they're starting, in my community, I'm like, do you know about the ABCs? If you're not talking about American Legion, Blue Hill Ave, and Cummins Highway, you're not going to be talking to me, and you're not going to get what I want, right? So I know they're careful and afraid to bring those things up. You don't need to give your opinion on what it is that you're voting on or what you're deciding on, but you have to mention it, right? I live in Mattapan. We don't have a lot of people that are biking. We have a lot of work to do with getting our neighbors to understand we have the right to be wherever it is that we're traveling. When I work with students in schools, it's the same thing. We all have the right to be able to travel however we want to. Big shout out to Yasha before he was named Chief of Streets. I invited him to come out on a ride with me in my neighborhood because I knew that at some point when he came to visit Mattapan, folks were gonna say, what do you know, right? If I could get a huge shout out for all of the folks that work for the city, it is not an easy job or a municipality. We are your friends. We are here to support you. You travel the way we do, but we have to be the voices for them because they are not permitted, just like I am not, to speak out in every setting. So talk to them, ask them, what do you want me to talk about when I go to the National Bike Summit in DC in March? Tell me what the concerns are, and we'll figure out a way to get the message going, okay? So, next slide. All right, more butts on bikes. That's my thing. All right, very quickly. Stacy gave me the 2. What are we all doing to get more butts on bikes? If you don't want to get more butts on bikes, you're not my person, right? Because of the fact that if you feel that you need to have the trail all to yourselves, then please bike on the street, all right? But we're trying to get more butts on bikes. We're trying to make sure that folks understand and remember the joy of biking. We need to change the conversation about how terrible and scary and awful it is to ride a bicycle. We as people that ride a bicycle cannot get into those conversations and agree with that. It takes time. What are you doing to get more people on bikes? All right, I need, start scrolling on the list. Okay. Learning how to put your bike on the bus. Sarah Freeman never knew how to do that. Once I showed her how to do that and we went live or stuff, people were like, I never knew that, I never knew I could do that, all right? Learning how to use a blue bike is not how to ride a blue bike, but how to pull it out of the system, how to make sure that the person that you're inviting to use a blue bike knows how to do that, all right? Join mobility groups. If you're not part of your neighborhood group, if you're not part of the Wilkes-Barre Rides and all of those groups, the next one, if you're not part of the Boston Cyclists Union, and if you are not part of the League of American Bicyclists, and by joining, it's not just like, okay, I read your newsletters. All of this work requires money and effort, all right? It does not cost a lot to be a part of these, so just do it. All right, she's going like this. Research and share programs that teach people how to ride. I learned how to ride on the Women's Learn to Ride. Make sure that you're telling folks about that. Volunteer at a bike repair. 30 Days of Biking, look it up. And talk to people about biking. Stop giving the Uber drivers a bad name. Every time I'm in an Uber and a rideshare, I talk to them about biking. They do respect us. We need to talk to our family members about not demanding that you get dropped off right in front of the business, all right? And people that are driving, stop parking in the bike lanes, stop parking in the bus stops, all right? All right, let's see. Next thing. Wait. Okay, stop whining, celebrate the wins. If there's something that's happening in your neighborhood, people were like, when are we gonna get blue bikes in Mattapan? Well, there we got them, all right? Now my thing is like, why the hell are you not using them? All right? Celebrate all the wins, take care of the littles, stop calling it a bike path. Stop calling it a bike path. It's for everyone. All right.
Thank you, Vivian. And just so you know, my butt on a bike.
That's right.
Okay, it's been on a bike. All right, y'all, it would not be an LSA event if we didn't have at least one kind of wonky policy topic to talk about. Luckily, we have Livable Street Alliance's, I'm sorry, I didn't mean wonky. I meant informative and helpful policy topic. You guys are, I don't know what's going on over there. So we have LSA's favorite lawyer, Mike Ryan, to talk to us about debt-based license suspension work. That's a lot of words. And the work that we are collaborating on to stop that policy.
I wasn't upset that you called me wonky. I'm just scared of the music, so I'm going to start right into this, all right? So 7 minutes starting now. Every year, tens of thousands of drivers lose their license because of inability to pay a fine to the RMV. In 2023, there have been 40,000 people charged with either driving with a suspended license or driving without a license. And most of those stem from an inability to pay an underlying debt. Debt-based driving restrictions have nothing to do with road safety, and they have everything to do with punishing poverty. One of the biggest challenges that low-income drivers face is compounding debt from the RMV. If you can't pay your initial fine, within 20 days you get hit with a late fee. 20 days after that, your license is suspended, and you have to pay a reinstatement fee on top of everything. In about a month and a half, your debt to the RMV will triple. That's loan shark behavior. Look, I'm not some great economist. I paid a lot of money for law school and then I joined the public defenders. But if somebody owes you money and you want them to pay you back, you don't take away their means of making that money. Because low-income drivers are dependent on driving, a lot of them, to make a living. And there is no hardship license available for when you lose your license for inability to pay. However, if that same person went out and drank and drove and got arrested, they could apply for a hardship license. So if anybody tells you that these suspensions are based on road safety, think about that. There are a lot of people when they lose their license, they have no choice but to continue to drive. If they don't drive, they can't work. They can't make money. They can't pay their rent. They can't buy groceries. They can't survive. Their families can't survive. So is that a choice? But if they do drive and they do get caught, they get arrested, their car gets towed, and then they have court fees, additional fines, and impound fees, all on top of money they couldn't pay back to begin with. And this can happen over and over again. I've talked to people who have spent years and thousands upon thousands of dollars to try to get their licenses back for what was at one point a $100 ticket. But let's also not forget about the indignity of being brought into a criminal court, having to go in front of a judge with the threat of jail time, all because you couldn't pay a fine? That's dehumanizing. And there are some judges who will be understanding. They're compassionate. They'll dismiss the charge on you, but they can't do anything about the fines from the RMV. Judges have no authority to reduce the fines or to waive the fines. They stay with you. And then there are some judges who still think that they can shame people out of poverty. They'll take a look at some clients and say, well, look at those sneakers. They look pretty new. Maybe they should have paid that RMV fine off, right? And I want to be clear about who this law is affecting. 100% are poor, and they're disproportionately from communities of color. Because isn't that who always bear the brunt of our systemic injustices? So what can we do? So there's good news. Now you guys need some good news now? So since 2017, 24 states plus the District of Columbia have passed legislation to end the practice of debt-based driving restrictions. And we have two heroes in our legislature right now, Representative Fluka Oakley and Senator Sear. Yeah, do that. And they're trying to make Massachusetts the 25th state to join them. They filed H 3314 and Senate Bill 2227, what we're calling the Debts and Driving Act. So what does that bill do? There are three principal reforms in this legislation. Number one, stop suspending licenses that are based on non-safety related reasons. What is a non-safety related reason? If you can pay your way out of a suspension, it is not related to safety. An unpaid speeding ticket is not related to safety. Just because you have $100 in your pocket does not make you a safer driver than someone who doesn't. Plus, if you make a habit out of speeding, you get penalized. If you get caught speeding 3 times in a span of 2 years, your license automatically gets suspended. Those types of laws are not going to change with the passage of this bill. Provision number 2, fee reduction or waivers for financial hardship. This just makes sense. If you don't have money, you can't pay money. But even though the suspension penalty will be going away, the non-renewal penalty will stay. So people will have to take advantage of these hearings because this is a change from earlier drafts of this legislation. Certain legislators were concerned that if there was no penalty, that people would just stop paying their fines even if they could. Now, we spent 2 years telling people that's not true and to look at other states who have passed similar legislation. People are mostly honest and people will pay their debts. But I will be honest with every one of you here. If there were no penalties, I would never pay a parking ticket again for the rest of my life. But there will be penalties, there will be repercussions, but removing the suspension penalties gives people who can pay time to pay and people who can't pay time to take advantage of these financial hardship hearings. And provision number 3, implement an electronic reminder from the RMV. Do you guys know the RMV still only uses the post office for all of their communication about licenses being suspended? My mailbox is basically a way station to my recycling bin. I lose 50% of the holiday cards that people send me because it gets swept up in junk mail. But if you're watching at home, not yours, you have a lovely family, your kids are getting so big, but some people, when they get pulled over, they have no idea the license has even been suspended. But because they never check their mail. But every one of you check your phones. You have them on you 99% of the time. I've seen this person check them 3 times since I started talking. This bill would require the RMV to send a text message with a link telling you how much you owe, a link to pay the fine, and how to appeal the fine or hardship instructions. And I know I'm out of time, but I need to show this last thing and ask you to do one thing. Please call your legislators. Ask them to co-sponsor H3314 and Senate Bill 2227. There are 300 of you watching right now and here. If all of you call tomorrow, I guarantee it will create a buzz. Let's do this together. Thank you guys so much.
I promise I'm handing things back over to Abby, who brilliantly kept us on track. But I do just want to take a moment to welcome virtually our first speaker for tonight. Elise Patterson is this amazing disability rights activist who was unable to join us in person. So she was able to create a video for us and will be joining us via video tonight. So the first of our second half is going to be a video from Elise, and then Abby will bring us our next 4 speakers. Take it away with the video.
Hi, my name is Elise Patterson. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the founder and executive artistic director of Ability Stands, which uses dance and art overall to promote intersectional disability rights in the greater Boston area and beyond. And from 2022 to 2023, it was actually an artist in residence with the Boston Transportation Department through the Arts and Culture Office in the city of Boston. My path to transportation was actually a winding journey. It started because I experienced an incredibly ableist experience with a Lyft driver who threw me out of the car trying to use ride credits, and upon seeing information about this opening, wanted to apply, and then I quickly realized that ride is related to the MBTA, which is different than the transportation department. But that started kind of my journey into learning more about transportation and realizing that it affects so much of our day, more than most. Or more than most things. And I began to dive in and learn and travel. And that led to a piece that I wrote for Commonwealth Magazine that kind of discussed the differences in creating walkable streets in Boston versus here. And I realized that I also wanted to bring in more community members. I never wanted to be that one disabled person that is the voice, but to have others from different neighborhoods, from different disability identities, other identities, to be able to share their voice and their experiences on the roads. And so I paid folks to come in either in person or virtually to have these community conversations with the transportation department staff and to learn together what are the issues and what are things that we can improve on. I quickly learned that, one, there are a lot of serious ramifications when transportation isn't done safely and effectively for our community. Things that were leading to injury and death and so much heaviness that can occur when our community just isn't thought of in the process. And so I didn't want to create just a simple, fun dance for folks. I felt as though that wasn't appropriate. And I also felt like I don't want to just kind of cover this up with a literal song and dance. And so I felt as though I wanted to expand upon my artistic practice and write. There was a lot of misinformation of the different resources that we have in our city and state and who can access what and what we are ultimately responsible for in these different departments and sectors to make the streets and sidewalks work for us. And I wanted to write about that and to not just inform the community of the resources and the different aspects of our current design and what we can do, but also for the transportation folks to get a better intersectional lens about how we are interacting with the streets and sidewalks and the needs that we have in order to radically redesign our work. And so that led to the Manifesto Against Offensive Design that I wrote. And it's pretty badass, if I might say so myself. Let me see if I have a copy real quick. Actually, give me 1 second. Here we go. Manifesto Against Offensive Design here. And I was able to work with an illustrator, Marius, to bring some of these illustrations and ideas that I had to life. And it covers topics like bike lanes and parking can coexist, because I noticed that that was a tension between biking interest groups and also folks who desperately need parking in order to get around the city. Things like cobblestone sidewalks aren't so pleasing, and how I have broken many a crutch dealing with the cobblestone sidewalks that exist in the streets, and how things that might be aesthetically pleasing might be harmful for those around us. And so it was definitely a process of diving into a lot of text that I was given, having conversations with folks in different transportation interest groups and different transportation departments in different states even, and just really radically reimagining what this can be like. It wasn't necessarily liked at first. There was a person in the space who was really against the process and not engaged with it, because they just really didn't understand why I wasn't going with the artistic form that they knew as dance, and instead creating something that could be inflammatory, for lack of a better word. But I knew within myself that this was needed, and I knew that the folks who read it would greatly benefit from learning more about how we can create an ideal street and sidewalk for everyone to participate in. And so that also led me to think about, how can I go back to my original process of using my body in a way that can go through the streets and sidewalks. And so that led me to thinking of how disability activists from decades and currently, past and present, have used movement crawls as a form of protest in thinking about inaccessible infrastructure. And so that was a process that I wanted to take, to use my body as a movement, as activism, which I have done through dance, but in a different way that made sense and made it feel impactful. And so I did it in 2 different locations, one in Mattapan Square, which was a very dangerous intersection to do it in, that really demonstrated lack of accessibility and just lack of being able to completely go around, disabled or not, as well as up the City Hall steps. Extremely painful, excruciating, but was grateful that I was able to have community to show up and to be witnesses and part of that process. And that person who was originally against the idea of the manifesto and against the idea of the movement crawls, seeing one of those movement crawls really changed their mind and changed their perspective of really seeing it now and really understanding that it's okay to be a bit radical, to be able to have radical redesign. And so I think for folks who are interested in urban planning, think about that and think about how you can implement more diversity into the work that you're doing. And that includes disabled folks, and that includes multiple disabled folks in your focus groups, in your staff, in your leadership. So thank you for your time. If you want to reach out, feel free to do so at elisepatterson@gmail.com for a physical or PDF copy of this book. I'm actually on leave and recovering from surgery, which is why I'm doing a video now, but happy to have conversations in the new year and think about how we can continue this work in multiple transportation areas and through multiple ways. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. I'm back. Don't worry, I'm still here. Great, so I know that a lot of us in the room are engineers, we are policy heads, we are planners, guilty. And it can be very transformative for our discipline to partner with artists who help us to push and see the world in a completely different way, particularly in a human way. And Sussman and Adrian Gill will tell us more about using biometrics to measure how we experience our public spaces.
Okay, my name is Ann. I'm president of the Human Architecture and Planning Institute, and we're here to make another revolution. So in a revolutionary space. Okay, I'll stop. Go.
I'm Adrian Gill. I was creative director for the project, what that means, envisioning the project, branding, design, all that good stuff. But more importantly, I want to say up front, it was amazing, an amazing, amazing team that we had to work with for this project. So when you look at images like this, it looks a little bit sad, all right? But the reality of it is this is what bus riders experience every day. So this one looks slightly better, but that's the palette that we have to work with. I see it as an opportunity. I think there's amazing, amazing opportunities all over the city to make the experience for bus riders so much better on a daily basis. So the first challenge we had was, how do we bring joy into this space? And my initial concept was, what if I could put 100 trees on the street in Broadway and 3rd? Okay, so we didn't manage that, but what we ended up with was 15 20-foot trees and 175 plants, living plants, plus graphic design. So what that meant that any place, any person from the community was walking, they were among flowers, either literally or figuratively. So we had amazing partners that I mentioned before. This was Studiofull Design, and you notice the graphic pattern is included on the bench, and that's Claudia on the top left. She's an amazing, amazing collaborator. Those were felt flowers, which we invited the community to take with them. La Cooperativa, they were a youth group that we work with, and they did a lot of hand-painted designs. They painted bees and butterflies on all of the planters that we had. And again, these were massive planters of trees that were 400 pounds plus to put in. But it wasn't just pretty work. It was also the level boarding platform, which allows better accessibility on and off the bus. So that was really, really amazing. Obviously, the graphic pattern was integrated there, and you can see this wasn't staged. This is a real photo. I love her here. I couldn't have asked for a better, a better prop, right? It was amazing. So we have all types of lovely models taking the bus every day. Leopard print, the whole 9 yards. So this is an overview of the platform. You notice we included the name of the city. That was on massive. That's like 30 feet across. So that was really about community pride. And you can see the planters and the trees that were installed. And just a couple other photos for what the final product looked like. Community engagement. This little kid on the left, child labor, but. But amazing, amazing budding artist, I choose to call it. But look at the joy, right? Look at the joy, right? And that's what we were hoping to achieve. I just want to say one thing. DPW, Chelsea DPW in this case, was amazing. And I just want a hand for DPW everywhere in this state. They're amazing, amazing, amazing. And quite frankly, they're the secret sauce to anything that we want to do. So, of course, we got some great press on this, but then came the second challenge. How do we measure the impact? Because, we do all this stuff, it's very, very subjective most of the time, so how do we measure it? And that's where my amazing partner, Ann, came in.
So, next slide. So what's basically amazing is you can take this slide now, and then I track it. Next slide. And you can see how non-consciously, as well as consciously, people look at this in 12 seconds. It's really wonderful to talk now because we're in a revolutionary time and I'm speaking in a revolutionary building. This is the 21st century revolution, next slide, where you can tell how design will impact people, how your non-conscious brain will change when you see certain patterns. Next slide. So what these are called, this is from iMotions. It's a company that all the car companies use these biometrics. They want to know exactly how your eyes move. And this shows, we showed people in 12 seconds both slides in an iMotions study. And this shows non-consciously they were directed towards the attractive flower walk. They ignored really the traditional asphalt. And the heat maps eye tracking heat maps glow reddest where people looked most. So you can tell in 12 seconds, 59 people really focused on and around the flowers. Next. Next. Again, the same thing. They focused on the bench. Next. Next. Again, when the bus station before intervention, people basically essentially ignored it. They looked beyond it. With the intervention, their brain makes them focus on it. Okay? Consciousness rests on non-conscious behavior. And with eye tracking that we have in the 21st century, we can tell that non-conscious behavior. That's why this software and ones like it are now used in business schools, because when you design something in business school, you need to know how the public will behave. Next. There's also now AI software is here, and this is the kind of software you can use to upload an image. You can see the traditional bus stop is avoided. The one with the intervention, people non-consciously will automatically look at it. Next. Again, this shows how people stop looking at the street light and focus more on the bus stop once the intervention happens. Next. And then this shows the visual sequence. The original one, it's designed, your brain will ignore it. The new one, your brain will focus right on the bench. Next. And so we can also do preference studies very quickly. They preferred, the 59% participants, 83% preferred the intervention. Next. And we now, this is really wild, you can measure their facial expressions. These technologies measure where people smiled most, what they looked at. And you also can have, next, what are called emotional heat maps. This technology just came out about 2 or 3 months ago, and basically it glows reddest where people are happiest and what they're looking at. 1 minute. Okay?
Design for joy, why not? Measure experience, why settle? And, inclusive community engagement, because it really, really, really matters. Thank you.
Next.
Thank you so much. I'm equal parts inspired and slightly terrified, but that's for me to sort out and my therapist, so that's great. Okay, amazing. So our next set of speakers are being brought to the stage, everyone, because they are criminals. Right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we go hard here. Matty Harris and Zack Bertocchi are seniors at Medford Vocational Technical High School, so many words, and are about to drop knowledge on us about what it really means to ask for forgiveness instead of permission.
Hey, I'm Matty. This is Zack, and let me see if I can get the clicker. Wrong way. There we go. Oh. Kinda. This is our talk, Freeing the T, a Criminal's Guide, brought to you by us. So before we begin, I have a long-winded disclaimer, courtesy of the MBTA's lawyers. The MBTA does not endorse or encourage this type of conduct. Evading fares and/or hacking the MBTA fare system is illegal, and the MBTA takes these matters seriously. Anyone caught engaged in this type of behavior will be referred to the appropriate law enforcement agency. The MBTA has implemented mitigation measures to address some of these concerns. Okay. So, who are we? We already introduced ourselves. This is me. This is Zack. We are both 17, and we are seniors at Medford Vocational Technical High School in Medford. So, what did we do? Well, the two of us, along with two of our friends, one of whom is here today. Say hi, Noah. We made the tea free. Yay. Well, kinda. We made it free for us. And how did we do that? We hacked the Charlie card. So we found a vulnerability that let us add infinite money, as well as change certain data types, like change the expiration date, or making our own custom passes, like student cards, senior cards, or employee passes, which let you ride for free forever. So it's pretty cool. So if you're wondering how this got started, I was inspired by the work of 3 MIT students who 15 years ago found a vulnerability in the Charlie ticket and the Charlie card. They found a way to copy and forge the old paper tickets, and they wanted to present their findings at a hacking convention called DEF CON. And so, how did they get thanked by the T for this lovely research? They got sued. And they had to cancel the talk. No fun. So I saw this, and I was like, that's really cool, except maybe like the whole getting sued part. And I thought, why don't we try to replicate this? Zack and I were actually on the subway together when I brought this up, and I was like, we should do this. So we spent a few months trying to figure out how to talk to the old tickets, and then they got rid of them. So we started trying to learn how to talk to the cards. And so hopefully you know what a Charlie card is. I don't really know what to say if you don't. But you might not be familiar with the technology behind it. There's something called NFC, Near Field Communications, the thing that lets you tap it on the readers. And fortunately for us, it is very hackable. So we spent many months trying to figure out how to talk to it. Eventually, we were able to figure out how to talk to them, and we figured out how to copy cards. And the nice thing is that they store money right on the card, so if you copy it, that means you have twice as much money. But that wasn't enough for us, so we said, all right, why don't we try to figure out how to change the money on the card? So we spent many months staring at data, trying to reverse engineer how they store it. And eventually, we came up with some theories, and we just planted ourselves at some subway stations where we could change cards, test them, and go back and forth like 30 times. And eventually, we had a breakthrough. Oh, wow, I don't know what happened here. But we were able to change the money up to $327.67. So at this point, we realized we had found a breakthrough. And to our knowledge, no one at the time had published anything about this. So we realized, okay, we're kind of at a crossroads here. We could either exploit this, we could go around and sell it and go to jail, or we could actually responsibly report this. So what did we do?
Yeah, so evidently we're still here today, able to talk to you guys. So we reached out to the T. As you can see here, this is a customer support forum on their website. You know, they don't really have a We Hacked Your Transit card forum, so we gave them a little bit of information about ourselves, not too much, as we were scared they'd bust down some doors. So they invited us to 10 Park Plaza in Boston, their headquarters, and we met with about a dozen officials from their security department. We told them what we did, how we reverse engineered the card, got the expiration date, the money value, everything we could ever want. So, best news, they didn't sue us. So this is our team, led by Scott Margolis all the way on the left. He was fantastic to work with, and his work is really impressive. So, what's being done about our hack? Nothing. Well, not really. As we told you earlier, the MBTA has implemented mitigation measures to address these concerns. Now, do we know what the concerns are? 100%. Do we know what the mitigations are? We learned the hard way. So, no fundamental fixes have actually been done to this. You can still today take your Charlie card, do exactly what we did, you know, tap it, change the money, and ride for free. They'll catch you. Oh, these aren't supposed to be in here. Anyways, so, good news. They're spending $935 million on a new fare system. Yeah. Well, you know, this begs the question, why don't we just make it free? And I'm sure you'll hear about that in the next talk right after us. So, as much as I love ragging on the T, just like anybody else, the MBTA has come a long way, especially in this department. Sorry, Matty. Back in 2008, they did get sued out of the wazoo, and, well, again, we're here. So, they were receptive and very willing to work with us. And yeah, this type of attitude should just be appreciated and repeated across the board for all agencies. So, meet our co-conspirators, Scott Campbell, Noah Gibson, who's in the back right there. If you want to harass us, we got some more information up there. And thank you guys for watching.
Honestly, like, bow down. I'm not even that cool, and I now feel old. It happened. I was about to say when I was 17, and yikes. All right, so mischief officially managed. Talking about free transit, I mean, what a concept. Are we Europe? I don't know. We might just be perhaps the Merrimack Valley. So Noah Berger has been able to solve the equation of providing free transit for his community, and he will tell us more about how he made the Merrimack Valley Transit free, making dreams come true legally.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Stacy. Thanks everyone. Happy Hanukkah. One issue when Stacy asked me about a preference when I go, I said I don't want to go before or after Ian Coss because I don't have a smooth radio or podcast voice. But she put me after two 17-year-olds who have amazing stage presence. So thank you. And we went through this. So I am Noah Berger. I am the administrator for the Merrimack Valley Transit, or MeVa. The name of our talk is We Are Fare Free, and we're bringing the receipts, but I'm going to lead with the punchline. These are the receipts. We are now almost 40% above our pre-pandemic numbers, that's kind of a unicorn. That most transit authorities are limping along at 50, 60, 70, maybe if I can get to 80% of, which is 20% below pre-pandemic numbers, we are well above that. And actually, just looking at the November data, we're even further above. So how did we get there? That wasn't one of the options. There we go. The highest profile thing we did, and sort of it's been teased a few times, is we went fare free in March of 2022. I think it's been unassailably a success. We tripled our ridership since going fare free. As I mentioned, we're almost 40% above our pre-pandemic number. And my favorite statistic is with ridership way up, complaints are down by a third. So for the scientists in the room, was this a controlled experiment? Did we just go fare free and leave everything else status quo? And the answer is unabashedly no. Because everyone who's critical of going fare free and says free lousy service doesn't do anyone any good, I'm 100% in agreement with. So we did a lot of other things. And before we talk about the service things, there are other important things we did too. So when I first started in this position now about 2.5 years ago, my team and I, we went and met with community groups, we rode the buses, and we asked two questions. We said, what are we doing well? What are we doing not so well? And I was prepared for both answers. What I was not prepared for was the third option, which was, we have no friggin' idea. You guys are irrelevant to us. And it was very clear we needed to do a better job being present in our community, being visible. So we put a focus group together. And by the way, our community is, we represent, we serve the 16 cities and towns in the Merrimack Valley, which is the center of gravity, are the gateway cities of Lawrence, Haverhill, and Methuen. We are a culturally and linguistically rich community. Our largest city, Lawrence, is 83% Latino. 75% of our ridership is Spanish speaking. So we put a focus group together of members of the community, and we redid our logo, redid our colors. The colors are now drawn from Old San Juan in Puerto Rico and Zona Colonial from the Dominican Republic. And then we applied those colors to our buses. So we took buses that had the exact same color scheme as mail trucks. And no disrespect to my brothers and sisters in the US Postal Service, that was not the image we were going for. And we reflected the community. We also put at the top of the buses, it says, let's go, and also says, vamos. And in the transit industry, we've gotten very good at translating into Spanish what you're not allowed to do. No eating, no drinking, no radio playing, don't step in front of the yellow line, don't bother the driver, but not a positive affirmative statement. We also made a point of wrapping our vans in the same color. And for the first time, people realized, oh, we didn't realize that the vans are part of the same service as the fixed route buses. And by the way, the disability community came out and they said, we want a active accessibility sign, because if you happen to be in the 20% plus percentage of the population that has a disability, we got places to go too. And we also took that color and vibrancy inside the buses themselves. So we brought the color into the seats. We also made the seats more comfortable. That was one of the biggest complaints I heard from riders on the bus, that the seats were either the cloth seats, which nasty stains, or the slick plastic seats where you slide right off. We added bus stops with shelters that had the vibrancy and the color. But now let's talk a little, and by the way, this is embraced by the arts community. None of these were commissioned. They were just taken on by the community itself. So now let's quickly talk about service. A lot of our TAs have routes that kind of meander about, and we wanted to respect our riders' time. We had a route, the number 7, which literally went in a figure 8. The 13, the inbound in places was so different from the outbound, you literally could not get back to where you started. So we straightened them out. We took a plate of spaghetti and pulled them at both ends. We added a beach bus, an express during the summer, so people from Lawrence could get to the beach. We doubled our frequencies in Lawrence. We extended service to 10 o'clock at night because life doesn't stop at 6 or 7. In January, we're looking forward to adding Sunday service. We're adding a special run to the Bedford VA with our MeVa service, even though Bedford's technically not in our service area. And finally, we established MeVa as a great place to work. You may have heard of a national driver shortage. We have actually grown our driver workforce by almost 40%. People want to work here. We added a high-end coffee machine that has fancy Italian coffee that I don't even know what they are, but the number one draw is actually hot chocolate. We also added a massage chair. Hopefully no one from the Federal Transit Administration is here, because I was asked, I hope you didn't use ARPA funds for that. I said, I'd love to have that conversation. Bring it on. So, by the way, great job. If anyone wants to drive a bus for us up in the Merrimack Valley, you're more than welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noah. It is, of course, important to bring people along literally on buses, but also during the whole process and the way that we design community changes. To do big things, we've actually got to talk to people. I know, go figure. Kirstie, Hostetter, and Ann Lynn, my fellow GSD classmate, what's up, girl? Very excited to have you on stage, is going to tell us a little bit more about how this can be done.
Alrighty, let's see if this is working. Okay, hey everybody. So we are excited to share some of our work on the Blue Hill Avenue Transportation Action Plan, specifically our attempt to put equitable engagement to the test.
Hi everybody, I'm Ann, and I am the Director of Planning and Narrative Strategy at Grayscale. I was also the project manager for Blue Hill Ave on the consultant side.
And I'm Kirstie. I formerly worked at the City of Boston, where I was the project manager for this project. I am going to work at the FTA, but I don't work there yet, don't worry. So first, a little bit about the communities that Blue Hill Avenue connects. This project spans from Mattapan through mid-Dorchester and up to Roxbury, some of the most diverse areas of the city. And actually, up until the mid-20th century, Blue Hill Avenue had a streetcar running down the middle, like you can see here. But importantly, during white flight, the streetcar was removed to speed up suburbanites' commutes into and out of the city. And that decision has had lasting consequences, and there's been a relative lack of investment in maintenance and public spaces on Blue Hill ever since. So Blue Hill Ave is now a pretty car-centric corridor that encourages driving for those who can and car ownership for those who can afford it. Sometimes this driving is reckless, and unfortunately Blue Hill Avenue is on the city's high crash network. And with no subways close by, like you can see on the map, Buses really are the public transit lifeline for these communities, and they carry more public transit riders every day than any individual branch of the Green Line. So for many years, the city of Boston has had a proposal for a complete transformation of Blue Hill Avenue that includes bus priority, safety improvements, greenery expansion. But this history of transportation injustice that we just discussed understandably led to severe mistrust and a lack of faith in public planning processes. So we had to try to do things a little bit differently than before. And to start, we actually put engagement and partnership building before design. So we went out, we talked to people, and we built an interdisciplinary team that could actually support holistic planning and collaboration and meet people where they were at.
So ultimately, we talked to thousands of people, and that was through the traditional large public meetings, kind of like this one, but it was also by making engagement really easy and comfortable for people. So we met people at libraries and at bus stops. Shout out Michaela. And ultimately, we talked to a lot of young people and bus operators and bus riders who often are not part of these processes, but will definitely be impacted by the decisions made. You guys all probably know engagement is more art than science, but that did not stop people from asking us what % of people want a bus lane or what % of people want a bike lane. And the issue is that engagement is not as simple as a poll. Transportation planning is not that simple either. And so for this project, we really tried to just figure out how people felt about their neighborhoods and how they wanted to feel in the future. And one of the spaces where we were really able to have that conversation were in our Real Talk conversations, which you can see in the photos at the bottom. These were hour-long, intimate conversations. Many of them were hosted by trained community facilitators from Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan. So there's the QR code if you want to check it out. It's really cool. It's really a cool website. You will not hear consensus on that website, and that is not actually what we were working towards because it is not possible. What we were working towards was transparency and capacity building because those were things that we could commit to and actually act on. And I know that Kirstie, from the very beginning, was very open about the fact that the city did have a preference for a multimodal design approach, and that transparency extended to decision-making for the project, funding, data collection and analysis, and the framework that you'll see on that website and in our final report was validated through a community coding workshop that we hosted with our Real Talk facilitators. This work is ongoing. It's also very, very personal. It's actually going to be carried through by many people in this room, like Maya Mudgal, Vineet, and I think Andrew McFarland and Philip Cherry. Hi, Andrew, and Philip are probably in here somewhere. And I know many folks probably live around Blue Hill Ave. I also want to showcase 2 of our Real Talk participants, if Michaela could help us hit play. So the first is Daryl.
Like people want a lot of change, like something new, or new process and stuff. It's just like a lot of change. People are tired of seeing it.
It is the jazz. What's that? Yeah, we can read it. We can
Yep.
absolutely read it.
So the first is from Daryl, from one of our youth Real Talks, talking about how people just want change. They're tired of seeing the same thing over and over again. The second is from Suzanne, who talks a lot about the fact that some people don't have a choice in how they travel. They use the bus not because they don't care about convenience, but because they don't have any other options.
More technical difficulties? There we go. So I actually really do encourage you all to go to the Real Talk website and hear people speak for themselves in their own voices, because at the end of the day, I am never going to be someone who has the same lived experience as people who actually grew up along Blue Hill Avenue and who use that corridor every day. And so for me, it was really important to go into every conversation I had with an open mind and a lot of humility, acknowledging that fact and doing my research to really understand the context I was stepping into. In places like Blue Hill Avenue, government mistrust is just going to be part of the project, and really transparency is the best way that we can start rebuilding confidence and sort of carrying that through projects over time. But something I also want to remind folks in this room is that at the end of the day, transportation is primarily a connector. It connects you to people, to family, to resources, to opportunities. And because of that, it is deeply personal. It determines what you have access to. And we need to make space for that emotion to show up and interact with that emotion in our engagement processes. And finally, a note of gratitude. So though Ann and I are the two people on stage here, we obviously did not do this big of a project alone. You can see from LivableStreets to a lot of other folks, we had a huge group partnering with us. And I also want to give a special thank you to the people who were on the core team with me. This work was at times deeply uncomfortable because we were pushing boundaries both professionally and personally. And so finding a great team to be together in that work was really part of what made this project so transformational. And I know that I am a better person, both personally and professionally, for it. So thank you, everybody.
Way to go. The Blue Hill Ave process is a nice reminder that Boston can actually do big things. Like, do you guys remember the one time that we did that really big thing? I think what was the big dig? The big something, yes. So we will welcome Coss to the stage, who will tell us the story of that large, exciting project.
Gonna tell the whole story in 7 minutes. Go. I've been told by folks who have listened to the podcast that they prefer listening at 1.5 speed, so I'm going to do my best to talk here live at 1.5 speed. Here we go. In 1998, when the Big Dig was at absolute peak construction in this town, the Boston Globe published this editorial, which was basically saying, this thing deserves a museum. It deserves a monument. And it ends, Boston is witnessing a maddening miracle, with the emphasis on maddening today. But tomorrow, the Big Dig will be a source of pride, an oft-told tale of fortitude and ingenuity worthy of a room of its own. The monument never happened. The museum never happened. If you've walked near here, perhaps you've seen this lonely post begging for some explanation. This is Bent 38, one of the few remaining pieces of the old elevated central artery that we tore down in the Big Dig. And when I was working on the podcast, I took a walk past this area with Fred Salvucci, one of the original architects of the Big Dig. And as we walked by her, yeah, give it up for Fred. When we walked by this spot, he said something that I keep thinking about, which was that, you know what, maybe we should have left more. Maybe we should have left more of that old elevated structure as a reminder to ourselves of what we did, what we took, and just how hard it was. I'm not here to advocate for a Big Dig monument. If someone wants to take that on, go for it. But I am interested in this idea of storytelling and memory. And so I'm going to do the thing that all podcasters do, which is say, let's rewind. If we go back to the early days of this project, the state, for obvious reasons, had a lot of incentive to make this thing seem easy, right? There was a lot of pressure to get federal officials on board, to get state officials on board, to get the public on board. And I think that attitude is best captured in this publication from 1989, Now You See It, Now You Don't. No one in 1989 wanted to talk about how hard this was going to be. So instead, they hired the illustrator from the book The Way Things Work, and they made these really nice, beautiful, colorful images showing how the old highway could be propped up, the earth could be excavated, the tunnel would be created, and the old highway could be removed. Now you see it, now you don't. The reality, of course, is that it was messy. It was always going to be messy. It was always going to be long. It was always going to be complicated. And it was always, always, always going to be expensive. Which, of course, we all found out pretty quickly, most notably in early 2000, when the project took its largest single cost jump of $1.4 billion. I have a small theory, which is that they chose to announce it the day of the New Hampshire primary so that it wouldn't be the top news story on the Globe, but that is, as of yet, unsubstantiated. A month after that article was published, Jim Karasiotis, who was basically the figurehead of the project at that time, was dragged in front of the state legislature to explain how this thing he was running had gotten so out of control. And these are his notes from that day, which he graciously lent to me while I was working on the podcast. And I'm struck by what he says in here. He doesn't apologize for what the project costs or how it's managed, but he says what he apologizes for is how that was communicated. In effect, how the story of this project was told. He says, quote, "I'm sorry for the way in which the project's additional cash needs became public, and I'm sorry for the negative attitudes that have been generated because of it." If you know anything about Jim Karasiotis, that is, wow, he doesn't apologize much. But for him, that is a strong apology. If you listen to the podcast, you can decide whether Jim Karasiotis is a villain or a fall guy or something in between. But what's clear to me is that in this moment, he encountered a kind of paradox of this project that I keep thinking about in telling the story, which is that if we had known all along from the beginning just how expensive it was going to be, it never would have happened. If we'd known how hard it was going to be, it never would have happened. And yet, I talked to many, many smart people who told me that for what we got, this project was a bargain. So how do we square that? One way that I've been thinking is to tell those stories of the past. Because now we can see the full arc of the Big Dig, from its conception to its completion, its many flaws, its many stumbling points, and its many fruits. And like Savucci said, I think there is merit in reminding ourselves that these fruits did not come easily, they did not come quickly, and they definitely did not come cheaply. If you want to hear me ramble about the Big Dig more, there's 8 hours worth of it wherever you get your podcasts. And in the spirit of telling the story of the Big Dig, this is my nephew, Jonah, and his Halloween costume for this year, which was Fred Savucci, and his own version. And we'll call that scheme Triple Z. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you to GBH for supporting the project, and to my co-producer, Isabel Hibbard, our editor, Lacey Roberts. Everything that we did in the podcast could not have been done without them. So thank you.
Y'all, that was 10. That was actually technically 11. We snuck the general manager in there, but I think we're okay with that. Can we give a shout out to all of our speakers tonight, especially our second round? So at the end of every 10 and 1, I always ask this question: did you have fun tonight? Raise your hand if you learned something new tonight. Exactly. So I hope that you walk away with new friends, with new knowledge. You'll get an email with us with lots of links, because as you know, we can't talk about our work in 7 minutes. We have at least 8 hours for just one of these. And I hope that you all are excited and Inspired. I'm expired. It's time to go home. And that you take a little bit of hope with you. I hope that you learned that this is hard work. It's sometimes expensive work. But when people say things like, it's impossible to do free transit, we prove them wrong. When people say it's impossible to create bus stops that are joyful, we prove them wrong. And we continue to prove them wrong. So I hope you take that spirit with you. A quick shout out again to our staff, the board, and all the volunteers who are here tonight. To our partners, this amazing space, and to GBH Forum Network, who's been streaming this live the entire night. And our event sponsors, if you like eating, drinking, and being in this space, they brought this space to you. Thank you so much. And to all of you for being here. Have a great night, and I look forward to seeing you at the 14th Annual Street Talk next year.